Do you ever feel like you're just dried up, done, washed up, empty, have nothing left to give? Sometimes when we're in the middle of trials and hard seasons in life, it's easy to feel like that. I remember there was a time when I just told the Lord, I have nothing left to give, Lord. I'm exhausted. The brain fog and the pain and the fatigue and all of these things. And then my heart was heavy and I have nothing left to give. But you do. And you can work through me and you can do what you want with me. And this morning, I want to look at that. I was planning on doing something else this morning. But I was reading in my personal devotion time this morning, and I came to Ezekiel chapter 37, the valley of dry bones. And it reminded me of times when I felt like I was dried up and done, like there's nothing left to give. And seeing what God has done since that time, I wanted to encourage you. Maybe today you just feel done. You have nothing left to give, whether it's in your home, in ministry, in life in general. I'm done. I'm empty. I'm washed up. I'm too sick, or I'm too tired, or I'm too far gone in sin, or whatever it is. I'm done. There's no coming back from this. There's no hope from this. There's nothing left. And I want to encourage you this morning that God is the God who can restore dry bones. He sent Ezekiel to look out over this valley full of dry bones. And we're not going to look at his prophecy to Israel and all of that. We're going to look at an application today. And we're going to look at God and what he can do today. And excuse the mess in my throat this morning. We want to look at God and who he is in this and who he is for us. He tells Ezekiel, he says, look at this valley full of dry bones. He says, can these bones live again? And Ezekiel says, you know, Lord, what am I supposed to say? You can do anything. I don't think so. There's no hope. And God tells him, prophesy the impossible. So Ezekiel prophesies the impossible. And he just does what God tells him to do. And God does something amazing and makes these bones live again. And then he has a message for the house of Israel from it. And it reminds us that nothing is too far gone for God. We're not too far away from God. We're not too sick for God. We're not too dry. There are times when my spirit felt dry in the middle of the trials, and a lot of that was the inflammation in the brain and things that caused depression and just a feeling of I've got nothing left. There's nothing else I can do. And yet I knew that the enemy is a liar and that God can do anything. In fact, back in Jeremiah 32:27, verse 26, then came the word of the Lord unto Jeremiah, saying, behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is there anything too hard for me? Jeremiah is looking a little bit not a little bit. Jeremiah is looking at the hardships and the problems and the things that are going wrong and the hopelessness of it. And God says, Jeremiah, behold me. Look at me. I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is there anything too hard for me? God asked Abraham this same question when he came and told Abraham again that this year, according to the time of life, Sarah's going to have a son. And in the tent behind him, Sarah laughs. And he's like, why did she laugh? And she's like, I didn't laugh. He says, yeah, you laughed. And he tells Abraham, or he asks Abraham, Is anything too hard for the Lord? You and Sarah laugh at this, and you kind of see this as a hopeless lost cause, which is why they went off and tried to help God out with Hagar and that whole situation, because they felt like God had failed to keep a promise. You said I was going to have a son. My wife is too old. Sarah's like, I'm too old. God said we were going to have a son. Maybe you should just take Hagar. Get a son from her. I'll have a son from her. And that wasn't what God promised. Nothing is too hard for God. And when we come to the valley of dry bones in our own life, and we feel like everything is hopeless, there's nothing left, there's no hope, I want to encourage you this morning to remember that we serve the God who can do anything. The God who is working in your life is the God who blew the wind all night and parted the Red Sea and dried it up so an entire nation could walk across it. This is the God who brought down the walls of Jericho by marching around silently and then shouting to the Lord. Israel didn't bring down those walls. God did. This is the God that brought a whole valley of dry bones back to life as an army. This is the God who raised Lazarus from the dead. The God who loved enough to send his own son to Calvary and was powerful enough to bring him back from the dead for us. This is the same God who's working in your life today. Now, there are some, I know there are some who will hear this who say, yeah, but I'm here because I messed up. Don't let the enemy discourage you with that. If you are in the valley, this valley of dry bones this morning, today, because of your own choices, is anything too hard for God? No, my friend. Nothing is too hard for God. No restoration is too hard for God. If you are hurting this morning because of a rift in a relationship and you've tried to repair it and there's nothing left that you can do, leave it in God's hands. There's nothing too hard for God. If you are sick this morning, think of the woman who had that issue of blood for 12 years and she said, if I can just touch the hem of his garment. There's nothing too hard for God. Nothing is too hard for our God. Now, don't fall into the trap of believing, well then, if God can do anything, then if I ask him, he has to. Not everything is for our good or his glory. And sometimes, remember, God's answer is no. But when there's a no, there's always grace. Paul came, the Apostle Paul came to God and begged God 3 times to remove the thorn in his flesh. We don't know what the thorn in his flesh was. There are ideas and speculations, but really it doesn't matter because the principle is what's important here. And God said, no, my grace is sufficient. If God says no to your request, his grace is always sufficient. We sometimes, quite often, in fact, factor out God's grace when we're looking at situations in our lives. I remember reading or listening to an interview with Elizabeth Elliot, and she said, people tell me often, I couldn't do this. I couldn't go through. I couldn't have gone through what you did. I wouldn't have made it. I wouldn't have. And she said, what people fail to factor in when looking at the possibility of hard things coming, like looking at someone and saying, oh, they lost their spouse or they lost their child and I could never survive that. She said, people fail to factor in the grace of God. And when we look at a situation and we've asked God for something impossible, and we think if he doesn't give it to us, all hope is lost. No, it's not. Because when you think that, you fail to factor in the grace of God. So today, this is not going to be long. I just want to encourage you. If you're facing your own valley of dry bones, doesn't matter what it is. If you're facing your own impossible valley, I want you to remember that there is nothing too hard for God. And that which is dried up, dead, God is able to bring back to life. That which is impossible, God is able to fulfill. And if in His great wisdom and His amazing love, He says no to your request, His grace is sufficient. Don't expect His grace for the rest of your life to show up today. His grace today is sufficient for today. And when tomorrow comes, it'll be sufficient for tomorrow. And my heart is heavy this morning for the person who feels like they're in an impossible situation. Because I've been there. And it looks like all hope is lost. And I want to encourage you this morning, all hope is not lost. Because we serve the God of the impossible. We serve the God who created this universe. And yes, man has spoiled it, and sin has destroyed it and made it feel like it's hopeless at times. But God, in His goodness, can restore anything. And God can do anything for you. And if He doesn't do what you've asked, trust Him and seek Him and rest in His abundant grace and wait to see what great things He will do from it. And while you're waiting, don't forget to offer Him a sacrifice of praise.